So hello everyone, today we'll try to understand Python functions. On your screen you can see a basic definition of Python function. So generally functions in Python have a following syntax. So this is a keyword def. So whenever you are writing a function, you have to give this identifier, which basically means definition. So this is the beginning of when you declare a function. So this means define. So def means define. So define a function named a descriptive name. So this is the name of the function. So generally it is a good practice to provide a descriptive name to your function. Then this function takes in optional arguments. Optional because sometimes functions may require arguments, sometimes they may not require arguments. So depending upon that, the arguments that you're providing can be optional. After this, you can provide a doc string, which means that what that function is particularly doing. So generally documentation inside a function is important because when you are reading your functions at a later point in time, or someone else is reading your code which you have shared with them, or sometimes we put code on GitHub. So if someone else is trying to make sense of your code, the document string is vital. So this is generally enclosed in, you can see 3 inverted commas in the beginning and 3 in the end. The beautiful thing about this doc string is that it can be split, so there can be multiple lines between anything written between these 3 inverted commas. Later you will add your functions code, which goes here. Currently this is commented out because I just want to show where your code of the function goes. And lastly, the code may or may not have a return value, so that's why the return is optional. Sometimes you will see functions which are not returning anything, so this is also alright, but generally speaking, this is the definition of a Python function. So we will try to understand the nuances of Python functions in a very practical manner in this short video. So let's begin. So let's say the problem is to identify the vowels in an entered sentence. So obviously, because you are trying to identify vowels in an entered sentence, you need to know what are vowels. So let's say we declare a set of vowels. So generally, as you know by a previous understanding, a set is a data structure in Python in which all the objects are unique. So I've declared a set of vowels. So if I print this set, you should see that it will return this sort of set with all the unique vowels. Now that I know that vowels are to be found, obviously I need an input string. So input sentence, let's say I ask for the input string from the user, so I ask enter a sentence. One more thing I forgot to mention while explaining the function definition was that this is in 3 strings. Sometimes in Python what happens is sometimes user use double quotes or they use single quotes. So what's the difference? The difference is there's not much of difference, but clearly when you use something like this is a doc string, so you can enter something and add like this. So this can take care of multiple sentences in the same quote, but this may not be true for double quotes. So suppose something goes like this, or this may not generally hold, so you have to end it within this thing. And it's a good practice to maintain consistency in if you are using a single quote or double quote. Alright, so with that said, let's say you're asking the user for the input sentence, and now that you have an input sentence, let us also reduce this to a set, because we will be testing whether or not it has the vowels. So I create an input sentence set out of the input sentence. Alright, after this, what I can do is that I can just print out the intersection between these two sets. So vowels is one set and intersection of this vowel set with input sentence set. So this should be able to give me what I'm trying to find out. So let us run this piece of code. So let's say I entered a sentence, this is a beautiful day to be alive. So this is my input string and I want my program to identify the vowels in this, so the intersection. So when I enter this, as you can see again, these are the vowels that have been identified. So there is I, there is E, there is O, there is U also in beautiful. So this might be creating confusion for you. So let's say if I don't print this, and let's try to run again. So let's say I am trying to learn. So suppose this is my input sentence, and you can see that there is A is there, E is there, I is there, O is not there, O is there, yes, and U is not there. So there are four vowels. So again my program has returned the four vowels in this example. But suppose that I have to invoke this function again and again for multiple inputs. So one of the good practices is to create a function which does exactly what these four lines are doing. So how do I do that? So as I mentioned before, that we can create a function. So the utility of function is that it makes your code reusable. You won't have to write the same piece of code again and again. So for example, if you are sort of identifying the vowels in several places of your program, you don't need to write this again and again. You can just declare a function and it will take care of it for you. So let's see how we can create a function for this. So as shown here, we have to start with def. So we write def, and then we have to give a descriptive name to a function. So let's say it is a vowel finding function, so we can say search for vowels. And so currently we are not giving it in any arguments, and then there is a semicolon that follows. After that, what we can do is that we can simply append this code uh, in this, although later I will show you how to further improve the piece of code that we have written. So now what we have done is that we have a function which is search for vowels, and all these things are happening inside of that function. So this is the function definition. So this will not call you your function. To call your function, you have to invoke that function. So in Python we invoke that function by calling that function with these brackets. So let's say now we try to run this. So again we have to enter a sentence. So today is Saturday, and then again four vowels are returned. So let me give another example. So that a function which has minimum vowels as possible. So let's say t thus you are. So suppose this. So again in this particular only u vowel was there, so it has been written. So okay, all right. So Python generally tells in its Python enhancement program that there should be a gap of 2 lines between the function definition and the other piece of code. So there were 1 line, so that is why it was showing error. Now how can we improve this particular function? So you see that the function currently does not have any arguments. What if in one of the arguments is the particular sentence in which I'm trying to identify the vowels? So what I'll do is that I'll remove this line, these 2 lines. I'll remove these 2 lines, and instead of that I'll provide an argument which is an input sentence. So let us look at another definition. So I'll create a new definition just so that you can understand what I mean. So let's say I create an argument sentence. Okay, now the sentence argument, what it does is that it is an argument in the Python functions. So again I have a set of vowels, and then I reduce the sentence into a set and then try to identify the intersection. So basically in one single line what I can do is print vowels dot intersection of sentence which I have to reduce in a set. So set of sentence. So again because these two definitions are same, so it is giving me error, so let me remove this. So I hope you got clarity on this, so I'll just comment it out. Yeah, so I have just commented it out. So this is my new function definition. So what is happening in this particular case is that again I'm asking the user to enter the sentence, but here the sentence is an argument, and so let's see what happens. So when I run this code, there's an error that comes. So the error is that it's a type error. So there are many different types of errors in Python, so this is a type error. So it says that this particular function is missing one required positional argument sentence. So you see in the definition I have given an argument which should be provided in the function invocation call, but when I'm invoking the particular function I have not provided any argument. So to take care of that, what I'll do is I'll just put input phrase equal to input, please enter a sentence, and then when I put this input phrase into this, now let's see if our program runs or not. So I enter a sentence, this is a sentence. So you see now the program is working. So what is happening is that now I have created a function with an argument. Earlier there was a function but there was no argument, but this time there is a function and there is a argument here. You must note one thing that so let's say I do this. Let's say I'm passing two arguments, and if I run it, so let's say this is a sentence. So again it will throw an error. The error is that it takes one position argument but two argument. So you see in the function definition we just wanted one argument, it's there in the definition, but when I'm invoking it, I'm invoking it with two arguments. So this is wrong. So this cannot happen. Then the number of arguments provided while at invocation have to be same as in the function definition. So this is one important thing. Okay, now going on, let's talk about let's say of returning a function. So whether or not a function is returning. So currently we are printing it, right? We are printing whatever the program is doing. So it is returning us a intersection of the two sets. So if I were to return it, let's see, if I were to return it, what would have happened? So instead of printing, I'm just asking it to return it. So let's see what happens. So this is a program. So you see nothing is getting printed, but still I return. But it's not printing because there is no print thing. So if I add print here, I invoke the function with the argument and then I put print, and now when I run it, it should be okay. So again a similar thing is happening. So this is the example of return statement in functions. Now this program is basically doing one thing, it is just checking for vowels. But what if I want to identify a different set of alphabets in a sentence? So how do I do that? So suppose I want user not only to identify vowels but identify a certain set of alphabets that the user can specify. So again see, this was an argument in which the vowels were getting searched, but now the problem has changed. The problem is that okay, there is a sentence and then there is a set of words which has alphabets, and those alphabets need to be identified in that particular sentence. So again we will need to create a program which has two arguments. So Now because we are no longer searching for vowels, so there has to be a better name for our function. So let's say search for letters, and then there is a sentence, and then there is letters. Okay, so what is essentially happening now is that the user is providing a sentence and the user is providing letters, and the program has to identify whether or not this given set of letters are specified in the sentence. So let's say we can reduce this into a one line thing. So let's say letters, set of letters, intersection with set of sentence. So this program should essentially do so. I'll comment out this also. So now our function is ready. So what is happening is that the sentence that is letters, I'm reducing them both to set, and then I'm trying to find out the intersection. Note that our previous invocation is now invalid. Why? Can you guess the reason? I'll pause for a moment here. Yeah, so the reason would be that, you see, again, the function definition has two arguments, but the invocation has only one argument, and if you run it, it will throw an error. So search for vowels is not defined. Did you mean search for letters? Again, this function doesn't really exist. So even if I were to replace this with search for letters and invoke it, let us see if it runs or not. So again, it would say search for letters is missing one required position argument letter. So this has a sentence because it tracks of the order in the argument, so it is assuming that input phrase is a sentence. So this is something called as the position argument. So given the position of argument and the position of argument in the invocation, it maps to that. So this invocation is lacking the second argument, and that is why there is an error. So we will remove this, and let's say we ask the user for input letters as well. So we say please enter the letters you wish to search for. Okay, so now we are good to go, and let us see what our program returns. So there is input phrase and there is input letters. So let us try to run this program now. So this is a program, and now I want to search for T. Let's say T H M G. So again here I'm trying to search for C. You see, even though T was there, but this was capital and this was small case, so it was not identified. So the case sensitivity is there. But now what has happened is that I started off with vowel searching, and then now I made a generalized case. So even if now I want to search for let's say vowels, I can just simply give this and the vowels will be there. But suppose what happens is that of course I am giving user the advantage or the flexibility to enter the letters he or she wants to search for, but in case it is not provided, I want the program to search for let's say vowels by default. So for default value, what happens is that we can do one thing. So for default we can just put this argument, so this becomes the default argument for letters. So even if the person is not providing, the default will be taken. So for example, so this is one invocation. If I change this to, so suppose I just provide input phrase. So now that so see, I provided a default value here, and now if I invoke it, let's see what happens. I'll just comment out this particular line, and let's say I run. So let's say this is our program. Sorry for the spelling mistake, and I'm not entering anything here, but still you see A is here, I is here, and O is there. So now if I would not have provided this default argument, there would have been error that the second positional argument has not been provided. However, because I've specified a default argument, this is okay. So this is the beauty of default arguments in the Python functions. So now you must be wondering that this is a function and there is just single line in this function definition. So what's the point of creating a function when that function definition has only one single line? That's a good question. But if you really look at the function definition, see, so if something is happening, we will have to paste these lines multiple times. But understanding this line or this code is not immediately easy to understand this. The user will scratch his or her head to understand what is happening. But instead, if you just write search for letters wherever it is being called, search for letters, because it's a descriptive name, it is easier to understand that okay, there will be a sentence and there will be a set of letters that the user needs to search for. So this is the basic idea of creating functions. So that was about the default argument. So the thing that I just explained, that instead of writing this line as it is at multiple points in your code, it will increase the complexity, visual complexity. The person who's reading your code will be finding it very, very difficult to understand. But if you write it like this, it will be easier. So what we learn from here, that functions can hide complexity too. So functions can be used to abstract away the complexities. So this is why this becomes important. Now another thing I want to point out is that Python doesn't really specify, or Python interpreter does not expect the data types to be specified. But sometimes when we have large number of arguments in a function, it is wise to specify the argument or the type of the argument, so that person who is reading your code can understand. Yeah, so sometimes we need to understand also the data type of the argument that is being passed to the function, and especially when the number of arguments are more. So how do we specify? So this is a sentence which is typically being entered into a form of string. So how do we do that? So one way to do this is, I think you put a colon and then you tell it's a string, and here also you put a colon, you tell it's a string, and the default value is this, and then the return is a set, because it is a set getting returned. So this is a set. So this is how it happens. So what this is telling is that okay, there is a sentence argument which is a type of a string, there's a letters argument which is type of a string, the default value is AEIOU, and the function returns is a set. So you might find these type of declarations also, especially when the number of arguments are more or they are complex to understand. So this is another way to define the functions. So alright, now that we have learned about functions and arguments and annotations, by the way, these things are called as annotations, annotating the argument. So you might want to read more about this. So the last thing that I want to talk about is, as I had mentioned in the function definition, about the documentation string. So we did not talk about this in any of these functions. So essentially all of these functions should have a documentation string which tells about what this function is doing. So this particular function, what it is doing is that it searches for user given letters in a given sentence. So this is what this function is doing. So you see, now we know our complete function. So we have a function name, it has a set of arguments, and these arguments are annotated, which means we know that what is the kind of argument that it is taking, what is the argument, what is the return type. And now the function documentation is also there, which is called as the doc string. So this function basically is searching for user given letters in a given string. The advantage of this docstring is that so the first thing that anyone who is reading your code looks at the function name, and this docstring actually helps them to obtain a context of what is happening in this function, and then they can easily understand what is happening and understand the code because they will relate it to this docstring. So this is another good practice. So whenever you are writing functions, always remember to use a good descriptive name for your function. Understand whether or not it needs argument, but always please write documentation string. And if the input arguments are a bit complex or difficult to understand, you think for your users or whoever will be working on your code, please provide annotation. That's a good practice. I think this is all I learned and I wanted to share with all of you. And before ending, I want to say that functions, when you combine functions in a particular file, it becomes a module, and when modules are combined, they become a library. So in our next learning session together, we will try to understand modules in conjunction with functions. Thank you so much for staying with me. I will share this uh, code file in the description of this video, and please tell me please give me your feedback of this and let me know how may I improve upon this. So let us learn Python together, and let's stay uh, let's stay curious about learning and have a beginner's mind. Thank you so much.